Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Nick Taylor Horror Show. Pledge is a recent indie horror gem from director-writer team Daniel Robbins and Zack Weiner. Pledge follows three young hapless college kids as they attempt to pledge for a highly exclusive fraternity and are subsequently subjected to a sadistic gauntlet of unspeakably horrific hazing rituals. Pledge mixes humor and horror in a well-balanced and thoroughly engaging narrative with main characters that you genuinely care about. At the same time, Pledge manages to effortlessly delve into themes of elitism and the culture of bullying in a way that's relevant without being heavy-handed. Prior to Pledge, Zack and Daniel made Uncaged, a teen werewolf movie thriller from 2016. Zack and Daniel were friends in high school and went on to make low-budget horror movies together right here in my hometown of New York City. They've been enjoying a great amount of success lately as Pledge was recently acquired at Fantasia Fest by IFC Midnight and is on its way to Hulu. In addition to being a downright great time of a movie, Pledge is a prime example of an intelligently produced, lean and mean indie horror film that looks and feels way more expensive than it actually was. It also introduces a particularly strong horror mythology that is ripe with possibilities for sequels. I'd personally love to see Pledge unfold into a franchise. We sat down with Daniel Robinson, the director, Zack Weiner, the writer and one of the actors, and Zack Byrd, who was one of the main actors from Pledge. We explored the key lessons of indie horror filmmaking that they learned while making this movie. I had a lot of fun hanging out with these guys and hope you enjoy the interview as much as I did. Now, without further ado, here are the guys of Pledge. Guys, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So, let's talk about Pledge. How did the movie come to be? How did you guys all come together? How did this thing get made? What's the story behind it all?
Well, Daniel and I and our third producer, Mark, we all went to high school together.
Oh, wow.
And Mikey Gelfand. But I wasn't in high school with him, and he's the fourth person involved. And we have been just making videos since I was a freshman in high school and Daniel was a junior. We had a small rift. We ran for the same student government seat. But after that, we've been patched up, and we've been just working on stuff. But, yeah, and then we made a movie, Uncaged. Daniel and Mark wrote it, and Daniel directed, and I acted in it, and it was a really great experience. And so we wanted to do it again in 2016, and I had this idea for a horror comedy about hazing. Mm-hmm. And I told Daniel, and Daniel liked it.
Yeah, the one bad thing is he had the idea. We really wanted to shoot in July because we had everything going, and he came up with the idea in late April. So it gave us a really short timeline to get it made.
Oh, wow.
Even on set, the script still wasn't fully done. Zach calls it an evolving script.
Yeah, it's my own new style.
So the actors complained that they never had a chance to learn their lines overnight, but others would say that it kept them on their toes, that they would get pages on the day and have to learn the lines immediately.
That's
so
cool.
It led to a nice electricity.
Was there a lot of improv because of that? Yeah.
Yeah, we had a healthy amount of, but improv in the French sense, like, from the script directly, exactly. Why between the lines and tension. No, we got a lot of improv and a lot of good lines. And I realized it was such an important lesson, just not, at least for me, not to be so precious with these lines, because a better one's a better one. I don't care where it comes from.
And you came up, so it's your story, you came up with the idea originally?
Yeah, I came up with the original concept of hazing.
It seemed to speak to larger symbolic themes of today. There's obviously, it seems like there's an element of elitism and Trumpism in there, and just this overall concept of bullying. Were you trying to tap into any of that at all, or was this mostly pure story, and any sort of reflection of today's culture was merely the collective unconscious, or whatever you want to call it?
I think it was the collective unconscious. I mean, I was on a bus going to see a Trump speech because I thought it was a novelty at that point, and I was curious what it would be like. I thought he was never going to speak again. So I was on my way to a Trump speech when I had the idea. So
that's
maybe
crazy.
Subconsciously. But consciously, I just thought it would make for a fun story. And that was what we were really focused on, is just getting the story as fun and upsetting as possible.
Nice.
Yeah, and Zach hates when I say this, but
Here it comes. His theories.
That all these frat movies are about acceptance, and we tried to make it about something different to keep it interesting. Mm-hmm. So for us, it was about elitism and
But at its core, it was just that have-nots.
Right.
And whether having means that the have-nots are nothing or shit, because it's
Right.
very possible to have a system where some people get to be part of a club and it doesn't mean everyone else is just less than human or worse.
Yeah, which is super relevant in a ton of different ways. I mean, people talking about white male privilege and toxic masculinity, but it sounds like you were not consciously trying to do a movie about any of those things. It just all flowed naturally into what Pledge became.
Yeah, I think from me and from all of us giving a little part of it, but and going through, we kind of latched onto that core experience of being rejected and then how much you want to get into something.
Nice.
I can also say that Zach is one of the people that will often, when I come over to his house, which I do a lot now, it's just like, did you see that thing in the news or the paper? And you're very sensitive to all of that chaos that's going on. So it wouldn't surprise me if on a bus to a particular speech you were picking up on things like that. You're always commenting on this.
Well, Skull and Bones, thank you. That's nice of you to say. And Skull and Bones was part of it. And that was a little more conscious, seeing how that is an example of like this taken to a really elitist.
I don't know anything about them. I know they exist, but
They're kind of like, or unless they've changed, but they're pretty much just weakened now. They're not really as effective. But back when my dad went to Yale, but no one told him it even existed, much less they could be a part of it. It's just this secret club, and you have John Kerry, 2 other presidents,
right,
a bunch of CEOs, and
FDR, right?
FDR, I think.
Whoa.
The guy who produced It Follows. Don't tell me. Oh, we're on a podcast.
whoops.
A lot of people in there. Just this network of God knows how they got in.
Wait, your dad was in it too?
No, my dad learned senior year.
Oh, okay,
that
got
his
it.
friend had got punched freshman year and didn't even tell him that it existed.
Wow.
A lot of people
Holy
in
shit.
Yale hoped to be invited. My dad didn't even know what he was missing.
Right.
A proud lineage of elite members.
I remember, coming up in the 2004 election with the whole idea of Bush versus Kerry and how they both had this like eerily similar.
Yeah. The guy don't tase me, bro. You remember that
Oh,
video?
yeah.
Yeah.
He's yelling about Skull and Bones.
So this is exactly what he's like. He scours the internet and the news for these
Yeah.
outrageous moments and then turns them into art. It's
Are you a
pretty
flat earther too? You
I mean,
conspiracy
that's
guy?
an obvious thing. I don't feel like I need to debate.
Yeah, we're all
something
part
so
of
clear.
those groups.
So clearly true.
Nice. I figured as much. So, would love to go back to Uncaged. How did that come about? And that was essentially your breakout film, right? Or your first
Breakout is a generous word. It was
Okay.
it was our first film. That was when it was my 3rd year in NYU because I finished in 3 years because somehow they gave me credits for Israel.
Nice.
And over that winter break, Mark and I, we were roommates. We decided that we really wanted to make a comedy movie. But then my friends at Boulder Light Pictures, JD and Rafi, who have made the horror film Contracted, they said, if you make a comedy, it'll be the last movie you ever make. You're not going to get your money back.
Right.
So we said, okay, what should we do? They said, make a horror movie. So we said, all right. So then we came up with Uncaged. And we made it for a very low budget. And we shot it in 3.5 weeks.
Whoa.
And then it sold to RLJ, who sold it to Netflix. And that was back when Netflix was taking pretty much anything. Then it was on there for 2 years. And then we learned a lot on it.
Nice. How did you pull all the financing together in the beginning?
It was all friends of friends, family friends.
Oh, nice.
And a lot of me, Mark, and 2 of my other good friends.
Like micro
cool.
donations.
Yeah.
So everyone would put like 5 or
Oh, that's awesome.
People would put in like $2,000 or
Yeah.
$5,000.
blood simple strategy.
Right.
I think they did $60 from a lot of different dentists.
They did $60?
No,
Oh.
$100 from a
It's
lot of
all about
dentists.
dentists, right? Is that true? That I haven't tried pitching
what I
dentists,
heard.
but I read it in Dov Seaman's book, I forgot, Real to Deal,
Oh,
which
okay.
apparently is like the quintessence. Even though he never ended up being a filmmaker, that's the one book that's not written by a filmmaker that everybody says is like Tarantino even credits
Oh, wow.
Dov Seaman. Yeah,
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I got to read that.
Yeah, we got
Real to Deal. Yeah, he did his
Write it down.
courses too, but the book is it's unbelievably comprehensive.
Oh my
It's
God.
everything.
raising money is a lot of it on a smaller.
There's
like a
some
blood
of it. It's
simple.
not that up to date. Like it doesn't cover Kickstarter and things like that yet. I think the last edition was maybe 10 years ago, but a lot of the principles are super relevant.
Yeah. One thing that also helped for a lot of people chipping in money was we had the sales agent, our friends Boulder Light, locked on beforehand, and they had a good track record.
Oh,
It
nice.
seemed like a pretty safe bet that we would get some channel.
Right. It was also, so a lot of people said no because a film, you can invest in any asset in the world. You don't want
Right.
to put your money in a film. And I would always go with the pitch of this movie was going to be so good. This is how much money you can make. But once I changed it to, okay, look, even if it's really bad, we're making it for so little that you'll get it back.
Right.
Then people were like, all right, like here.
Nice. And then you sold it. Which is amazing. Did you get a sales agent, or were people just picking it up?
Our sales agent was Boulder Light Pictures, so Rafi and JD. And they also sold Pledge.
Nice. So
Yeah,
were
they're
you
good
one of
dudes.
those directors who did a horror movie as a way to start, and then you wanted to do real movies later, and then you fell in love with horror and then decided to do Pledge?
My intention with Uncaged was I'll just do a horror movie for the first movie.
Yeah.
But then after that, Mark and I really appreciated the genre more because we had to explore it so much.
Right.
So for the second one, we really learned what a better horror movie can look like. And Zach came up with the idea for Pledge, which fits so well. And then Pledge is a movie that we all love. And it's pretty gory.
And I think one thing also from Uncaged, because Daniel, the horror wasn't your first choice, but he has come to like it. And a big part of it was realizing how much room for our sensibility there is of making it weird and trying to make it funny and trying to expect. Because I think horror people are more open to new bizarre attempts. So
Yeah, there's a lot of room for weirdness in horror. It's very forgiving for exploring different things. And that's kind of the beauty of it.
Yeah, that's what I really like about it. Yeah.
So now you're a horror director. You're
Yeah,
gonna keep
pretty
it that
much.
way? You can stick with it?
I think so. I guess we'll see what the next thing is. Whatever Zach writes. If it's a rom-com, then we might have to do that.
I don't know any rom-com.
It'd be a Zom rom-com.
Zom-com rom.
Zom-com rom.
So did you guys both study acting? How did you
Yeah,
get
I came
to act?
from a fairly academic route. I got the bug in college. It was sort of liberal arts, general theater major. So then after a couple of years of saving money, I went to grad school to get my MFA in acting straight away. And then after saving money again for a year, I moved up to New York to try to pursue it. This was the first audition I had.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
I was
You
here
nailed
for
it.
under a week, which is kind of bizarre.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That never happens to anybody ever in the history of New York.
The serendipity is pretty remarkable. I have friends that come up, they're moving here. They ask me, how did you get your agent? How did you do it? And I was like, I got really lucky. They needed a me, and I was the me.
Well, Mark,
was there.
some of it's really testament to Mark Rappaport, our producer, who basically the way we initially tried casting people was posting on Backstage and all the acting.
And
Right.
casting networks. Yeah.
Casting networks, all of the accessible ones. But we didn't get that many applications. We weren't offering a ton of money necessarily. It was going to be a hard shoot. So we ended up searching. You can search in like the backlogs of all these websites with physical descriptions. So we would get these huge lists and then contact everyone that seemed good. And we saw Zach had just got online, and we contacted him, and he kind of half-assed his first audition.
That's very true.
So we emailed him. We're like, please, can you send another audition?
Wait, what websites did you look at the backlog of?
Backstage.
Oh, okay.
Not
Oh,
Backpage, because that
Oh.
sometimes is a scary confusion.
right. One's for actors, the other's for prostitutes.
Exactly.
Having midgets delivered to your door, yeah. Very different, very different.
Very different.
They were quite persistent. They asked me to do it twice, and finally I was like, sure. And I shot at 2 a.m. and was just like, whatever. I just want to get this audition.
Oh, it was a
done.
video audition.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
they-
video audition.
Oh, that's how they do
I had
that.
just moved to the city. I didn't have my stuff yet. Like I was waiting for the truck to come the next day to deliver half of my furniture. I was just moving in, and so I was like, all right, well, if this is the way that it works, let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
The
Nice.
next day, I was in the Upper
Well,
West
we br-
Side in person. Doing
Yeah,
some
we brought
stuff.
him in,
Yeah.
and the thing we needed from him, we realized, because his audition was good on camera, but we felt weird asking him to pretend like he was being tortured just by himself. So we called him in.
Yeah,
and
that sounds like Backpage. That's more like That's more like it.
exactly. But yeah, send us 5 videos of your show. So he came in, and we literally just said, okay, we're going to pretend to brand you, and you're going to get branded. I mean, we did that, and he was completely convincing and scary.
Whoa.
And we're like, okay.
Yeah, that was probably the most difficult part to watch, I thought.
Oh,
the
really?
branding.
Wow.
I thought it was so brutal. To see it done once, and then you have to see it done I think it was you branded 3 people in a row.
Yeah, a bunch of people.
That I thought was probably the most brutal part of the entire movie. Just again and again and again, and yeah. And then it getting all nasty and infected, like that was that was probably the most brutal part. And there's like gorier parts, but some about just somebody getting their skin burned off. It's so sadistic. And the sadism of the guys, it was like that scene in Reservoir Dogs, like it was just the sadism of that scene is half the brutality, I think.
Yeah.
That's really
Kudos to Nicole for those
flattering comparison.
incredible like makeup and
Nicole Hernandez
effects.
and
Tanya.
we were happy to hear that because that's our favorite scene. A lot of people have trouble with the soup scene, and some
Oh
people
yeah, that was
walk
pretty
out.
gross too.
Yeah, one good story for production-wise for the branding scene is that that's the one scene in the film that balances tones the most, where he's saying funny lines and calling them ridiculous nicknames,
Right,
but it's
right.
also terrifying and they get branded.
Yeah.
And we weren't sure if that scene would ever work. So when we looked for an editor, Keaton and Mark, the two producers, had the idea of we narrow it down to 4 or 5, and then we sent all of that footage to 4 editors. And then they all cut a version of the scene, and we went with the editor who had the best version, and that was Nick Voitas.
Oh, that's so cool. So
in
that
Burbank.
was their kind of audition to be the editor.
Yeah, because it's so hard to tell who's going to be a good editor.
Right.
And there's an editing reel is like the biggest joke of a reel.
Right.
Cinematography makes sense. Directing, you're pushing what your reel, the purpose of it, and then editing, how do you even know?
Right.
But then Nick was so good. I swore I would only work with someone in New York so you can be there in person, but he was so incredible
That's
that
awesome.
we just shipped it out to Burbank and he edited the movie and saved it.
A little funny story about Daniel went to Columbia. So he went to Columbia after we shot it. That was a big part of the rush. And his first class, he got to take like an elective in
This
what
was
was
bad.
it, editing.
Yeah. At the film school.
At the film school, he got to take that wasn't where he was going to school, but and he took audited the class, and they actually needed a scene for everyone to edit. And this
Okay.
is when we were doing the auditions. We thought we'll do the same system. We'll give everyone in the class the footage,
Okay.
and the teacher the footage, and they'll all try. And he sends it, and then like a week goes by, and the teacher hasn't answered, and he hasn't heard about it. He's getting nervous, so Daniel double checks the tape, and we remembered that. So we let the bad guys improvise, and a lot of the improv was anti-Semitic.
Oh fuck.
Yeah, because we're Jewish, so it's one of the only realms we can go into comfortably.
Yeah, without being offended, or offending other people. So we just let some of the bad guys riff.
Yeah, and it got really bad. So then I
Oh,
realized,
man.
and I sent the teacher an apology email, like, sorry. She said, yeah, I watched this. It's definitely not appropriate. And then I just didn't show up to that class for the rest of the semester.
You sent it to Ramaz by accident?
Oh, yeah, that was our high school.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but they love it too.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I didn't know that story. That's awesome.
Yeah, that soup scene was pretty nice. It made me wonder, you must have researched a bunch of the hazing shit that some of these frats really
Yeah.
do. What were some of the nastiest stories that you came across in your research?
Nastiest stories. We show a lot of this. The branding is real, and we got that.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of people get branded.
A lot of people get branded.
Yeah, I know a
at
few
frats.
people that have brands on them.
And it's still on them. Jesus
Yeah.
God.
Yeah,
That's insane.
It's literally
and that's just to
insane.
haze? That's part of the hazing process, or once you're in? In other words, could you not be admitted to the frat and still have their brand on your ass?
That's
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
I think once you're
I think
in.
they brand you. I'm
Maybe
pretty-
that's the last. They know, that's the finale.
Yeah,
of
but
it.
we like doing it first in the movie just because then, like,
you're locked in.
right after
Yeah.
you do that, you can't go.
Right.
So as soon as they get that on you, you have such a psychological barrier to not continue.
What's
Right.
that? Like the cost,
Co-
sunk cost,
sunk cost,
of how much skin's been burned. Branding is real. We know people came up to us after a screening recently saying that the soup they did that, but with a smoothie. But it was animal guts and stuff.
Oh,
like
God.
disgusting stuff. I can tell you the grossest one I've heard,
What?
but it's horrible and I'll
Let's do
It's
it.
for this podcast can handle.
My brother's friend was recently forced to vomit into a general vomit area, and then he had to eat back some of the vomit.
Oh,
with the
God.
possibility that it was other people's.
Oh, Jesus
yeah.
God.
And he said it very matter of factly to my brother and his friends.
That's pretty
And then
bad.
my brother actually, from that, not the movie, decided not to pledge.
Yeah, and
That was the end of it. He's like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
and I heard of something where it's Edward 40 hands, where they would tie two
Yep.
40s to each of your hands.
Yep.
But this frat did a twist on it where they locked everyone in a small room and they couldn't leave until they finished that in a giant keg, which is it's impossible to finish.
Wow.
And they had a strobe light going with the same song on repeat, and the only way to finish it is to drink it and then puke it up or pee.
Holy
so the
shit.
room, I think they were in there for like 20 hours. And the
God
room was just
damn.
a cesspool.
But as gross as all this stuff
This was in the South.
Yeah,
Wow.
the South, it seems like they're more intense.
Yeah,
by
the
way.
South knows where it's at.
They're really intense. But all the gross stuff is one thing, but the thing that scares me the most, and when I was thinking about it for my younger brother to do it, is at some point you do have to trust these kids basically with your life.
Right.
You really do, because at some point most of the people that get hazed are drunk to the point of they'll be sick.
Yeah.
And I knew kids around because you were talking before about what motivated us. I'm like looking back, maybe this was part of it. Some kids I knew who were like bullies in high school went on to be hazing kids. And I would hear stories from at college, like they were doing it in a whole different way, and it's a nightmare
Because they were bullies.
because they're bullies. Like it's
So they're naturally sadistic and they really want to fuck with the players.
exactly
God
versus
damn.
doing
Yeah.
right. Do you enjoy, like? Are you doing it? Is it for a purpose, or are you just really getting a kick out of it?
Right.
There was a story in the news not long ago about a pledge who he didn't drink alcohol, and the fraternity tried to respect that, but they made a rule that he had to drink water for every beer that the other pledges were drinking and chugging. And because they were drinking alcohol, they eventually puked it up. Their liver just reacted and got it out of their system, but the guy drinking water didn't have that reflex and actually ended up getting brain damage from having to chug so much water compared to the rest of the beer. So it's just, the environment is sadistic.
crazy.
Even in different lights, it's sadistic. It's insane.
Doesn't that happen to people on ecstasy when they just get hyper dehydrated or thirsty and then they just drink so much water they just like, die?
I have heard of that, and the water. I have heard like a shock jock in LA died that way too.
Oh, wow.
Get like a fun like water drinking contest. Thank you.
It's these bullies' fault that the movie's so fucked up, because towards the end, that last haze with the rat in the bucket, that was the last one that we had to say, if the audience is watching, they would know, okay, this isn't a frat, it's definitely something more.
Yeah.
And we came up with stuff, but then our friends said, now I've heard way worse. So we're like, how bad does it have to get? So then eventually we Googled medieval torture and we went through a list, and this one just worked thematically.
Yeah.
But then we found out after the fact that Too Fast, Too Furious actually has the same exact scene.
Yeah, I knew
A PG-13 version. So it shows you
Yeah.
that if you really put effort into a set piece, you can make it pretty gross.
Yeah, because I actually remember I was in London as a kid, and we went to the London Dungeon, which is a whole exhibition of medieval torture.
Oh, yeah, I've been there.
It's awesome.
That shit's-
And I heard about the rat torture, which they would actually do that. They'd put a rat on somebody's stomach and interrogate them and put like a cage over the rat and a fire over the cage. So the rat has no choice other than to burrow through the person's body to get out.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was amazing that should be in a movie. And then I remember seeing it before seeing it in Pledge. I saw it somewhere else, and I think it was also on a TV show.
Game of Thrones first.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones does it.
Yeah, but no,
And
that's what I
1984 also does something similar to it as well.
Oh, really? With a rat?
With a cage. I can't quite remember exactly what it is, but they basically put this like helmet on the person with
That's
rats and
worse.
stuff in it.
Oh, and
That's even
the rats have to go through their head?
Yeah.
Whoa, that's hardcore.
Tough.
Yeah, you got to draw the line.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, with the rat being blended, was that based on a true story? Because I would imagine you can die that way. Like if you ingest that kind of bacteria. There was also a whole documentary on rats, and I couldn't get through the trailer. It was so gross.
Baltimore, right? The rat.
Yeah, I think so. But it's all about rats all over like different cities and how bad these infestations are. And they have these weird parasites that cause their. Somebody was just telling me this. There's a kind of parasite that causes their brains to make them run towards danger. It pretty much reverses their fight or flight reflex so that they run towards danger and they start attacking people and dogs. And
Wow.
it turns they're like zombie rats.
Holy
yeah,
shit.
it's like a real thing.
Oh, that's
because of a
petrifying.
parasite.
It sounds like
Damn.
a scarier Zombievers.
Yeah, and if people get bit by them, or I would imagine ingest them, then they get the same stuff and
Oh my god.
Yeah.
can kill them or whatever.
I know a lot of friends who've eaten animals, but they all say it's like that was not the biggest thing.
With the frats?
Yeah.
Really?
But a lot of them are goldfish.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah,
that's
I've
not
never
as
heard that.
horrible. But a lot of people then also just say like the gut stuff. But
Right.
I guess you just hope once you eat it that they'll take you to the hospital if you get sick.
You would hope.
That's all
Yeah,
I can
people
do.
die from these hazing rituals all the time. I
lot.
don't know about all the time, but
Oh, it's
A lot,
every
a
year.
lot.
is that right?
Every year there's at least one.
Well, I mean, you got to know with these fraternities, they've been around for decades and decades and decades, or generations even. So they sweep this under the carpet a lot. Yeah.
But I do want to say one thing in defense of them, which is that I do know a lot of frats that not only are nice, but the hazing processes, as brutal as it is, actually do seem to bond these kids and they end up with friends. And
Yeah.
it seems like something innate to a lot of initiation rituals throughout history is like some kind of pain up front, and then you're in. But the dying and the torture, that just seems like, those guys are just having fun.
Yeah.
And they don't care. Those kids are pledges and they might not make it.
Yeah.
But I think that's why the movie expands its themes so well, because I didn't pledge a fraternity, but I was on a baseball team that made me do some similar things when I moved up to varsity.
What did they make you do on a baseball team?
It wasn't nearly as brutal as
They didn't make you do anything on a baseball team.
No, yeah. So one of the big things was that they would make you take a dip of tobacco and wouldn't give you a spit cup, and you'd have to do that on the way to your first game. You'd have to dip tobacco and then
hold it.
And yeah, if you spit it on the bus, the coach would get mad, so you end up swallowing all that, and eventually you get so much nicotine in your system that you puke it up. There was a lot of like icy hot on your balls. That was
Nice.
a big one as well.
That's just a Tuesday night for me.
Yeah, it's a pastime.
Seem pedestrian compared to the things we're doing in Pledge, but they're still cruel and ultimately this coming from this idea of being a gatekeeper for some sort of sacred bullshit that's
Now, it does make sense, though. It does bond people together. Like a lot of people in the military talk about how Hell Week bonds them together and SEALs and like that.
I just think that there are other ways.
I've
bonded with my castmates in theater plays before, too. You don't have to hurt each other.
That's because you all fuck each other in theater.
It's a whole other kind of bonding.
But I still think that there are more creative ways to do it.
This will sound weird, but I think the pain element to initiation is really important. Like even Pinky, like the blood thing when you cut. What do you like about the theater? Well, you don't even know.
Well, in Ramaz, like the people who
Our
were
high
in the
school.
arts were the people getting laid, while we were busy,
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're around a lot
I
of
think that might have
girls
just
and-
been you and
Yeah.
not really
Yeah, it makes total
just
sense.
the arts.
Yeah.
That's why I decided to go into film.
Little do we know.
Yeah.
Hinge profile doesn't really change much unless
No.
we get on Rhea.
Yeah, being in film in New York is very different than LA.
How's that?
Because if you're in film in LA, it's actually impressive. But in New York, people say, oh, this guy's delusional.
No, it's
Really?
No.
Yeah.
He's exaggerating. Daniel's self-deprecating to the point of hyperbole. It's more that we talked. It's. I think a lot of people are not as focused on it. They think it's cool, but it's just not the primary lifeblood here.
In New York.
In New York, yeah.
That's
it's
part of the reason it's
Finance,
good.
media. It's like a smaller.
But it's a smaller pond. Do you find it easier here
Yeah.
to pitch?
Oh.
Or to get the movies made? And because in LA, it's such a feeding frenzy.
Yeah, I think production-wise, Daniel, you can maybe speak better to this. In terms of meetings, I don't. There are not so many meetings that I've had here, and a lot more in LA. A lot more decisions seem to be made there. But in terms of production and getting actors and new talent on the production side, like cinematographers, I like New York a lot more because I feel like it's like you said, a smaller pond and a smaller community.
Right. A lot of people know each other.
A lot of people know each other.
And there's a tightness to it.
Yeah. And it's a good spirit because with these movies, you're taking more of a share of the movie than the upfront budget. So you want that kind of enthusiasm. And M. Night Shyamalan talked about it for his comeback for The Visit. He brought in a lot of new filmmakers, and he thought that helped a lot because he kept talking about how he was over-reliant on craft, which basically I guess meant that he had the best people in the world, so he didn't have to check on the. I don't know how. I didn't see Glass though, so who knows if this is good advice.
Oh, I saw Glass.
Yeah, it seems like New York culturally is also a little bit more straightforward, and you don't have meetings about meetings. Like New Yorkers are a little bit more of a get it done kind of culture, whereas in LA you can be having meetings about movies for years, and then hope that they get done.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That it's not a hard rule because there are types of people in both, but generally in LA, when I talk to someone, they say, "Yeah, I'm working on the script is with that manager and there's other things with this." And in New York, people will just say the thing that they're making.
Right.
They'll say, "Oh, I have this 60% of the way there, and I'm trying to make it in October." And it's a lot more. It's less abstract.
Yeah.
I think that's just how New Yorkers generally are.
And
No,
yeah, what
makes
is that
sense.
Woody Allen quote? And when he goes to LA and Annie Hall, it's like, I'm developing a concept for a concept. I think it's something. and it really does. You can fall into that I think I always imagined because it was for malicious reasons, but going out there, I think it's just a lot of smart people who get excited about, or talented people who get excited about talking about it, and then it does take a long time to start. The downside here is you can take a lot more action, but it's definitely a smaller group and lower budgets. At least is our plan.
Yeah.
I hear so many actors as well. You mentioned I'm attached to X, and LA-based actors, and I don't hear that talk in New York at all.
Right.
I've got the audition, I booked it or I didn't book it. I've never heard I'm attached to blank, and I'm now in this limbo place.
Right.
My hope is I think indie film really got tanked for a while in terms of its ability to go to market, and now it seems like maybe it's coming back. My hope is from Pledge and our learning experience that low budget doesn't mean low production value, and you can really get so much these days.
Yeah,
and
yeah, a big part of that is William Babcock, who's the DP. He knows how to make something look really good on the budget.
Yeah, it does not look low budget. It looks like something Blumhouse could have made, although they're relatively low budget. But it looks it does not look like you were skimping anywhere.
Yeah, I wish I could take some of the credit, but it's literally all him.
So is it the key to doing that is like for filmmakers who don't have the biggest budget and they want to get something out that looks good and professional? Because the kiss of death for an indie movie is it doesn't look high production value.
Right.
Yeah.
But clearly you weren't working with a super high budget, but
yeah, it was super. It was
We can tell you the
it was really
whatever
low.
you guess, just divided by.
It was 180.
Is that right?
180,000.
Okay, there.
No.
10,000 Kickstarter.
Holy shit. Really?
Yeah, you're the only person we've told the budget to of like weeks of interviews.
Whoa. I'm happy to cut it out if you
No,
can.
keep
I don't-
it. Keep
I don't
it.
know why
It's
you
180.
Yeah.
Damn. It looked amazing.
Thank you.
Shocking.
A lot of it was back.
And again, it was William Babcock. And when we looked for a DP,
That's your DP, yeah.
we looked for someone who would be able to do that, and he had that capability. Aside from being, two reasons we liked him a lot was one that his experience was mainly gaffing, and a lot of DPs obsess over camera, and some come from being an AC,
Right.
but cinematography is maybe like 90% lighting. And then 10% knowing the camera. So knowing that, we felt would give him a big advantage. And then in his reel, he took a lot of... he had a real POV with what he was doing, where some reels would just be very well lit and have kind of even lighting, and you could tell they had a pretty traditional lighting setup. But he would do things like light a whole scene with one key that's behind a character. And we said, okay, this guy could make things look a little more stylized, and because the whole movie takes place indoors, we knew that someone with that lighting creativity we didn't realize how good he would be, but he was just awesome. And Stephen Hochinsky, who was the gaffer on the film, helped a lot.
And and just one other thing about it was going into production, I was terrified that because we were trying really hard to get the organizational stuff and to finish the script, and I was imagining it as this top-down thing, so I was really scared giving away a script that wasn't fully finished. But I think the best possible thing is not having a full plan, but surrounding yourself with really not just talented people, but opinionated people. We had a lot of arguments on set, a lot of really bad arguments.
Yeah, it was a lot.
We thought it was our doom when it was going on. We thought the set was always on the verge of imploding. It was such bad fights. But I think now in retrospect, I'm glad for it, because on sets where everything goes smoothly, it means maybe we didn't really think that hard about
That's interesting.
the decision.
What kind of arguments?
The way we would block the scene, lines. I had some actors for good like it worked out, but they would argue with me about monologues that I'd written, and they would try to rewrite it with me.
Yeah, and I'm pretty
Babcock.
I'm pretty calm all the time, but I think I yelled once on set, and that was in the final fight scene when, spoiler, but Zach Byrd over here survives, then he has to kill Max, and somehow,
spoiler,
whatever. Somehow in the fight, he needs to get a knife,
Right.
and we just couldn't figure out how to get him a knife in a realistic way. And everyone was pitching these ideas, and then people started running with one. And I just was like, "No, we can't do that idea." And people were like, "Why?" It's like, "'Cause it's stupid." And everyone looked at me so confused, like, "Wow, like, he's really mad." And then eventually we came up with the idea of if the other one gets stabbed in the right way and he falls near him, he can take it from him.
yeah.
But we were going through ideas of, maybe the other guy can throw him a knife and they'll be like friends. And we're like, no, we can't do that.
Yeah, I think ideas are a lot cheaper than I realized, and it's just if everyone should have good ideas about everything ideally.
So you pretty much punted the idea or the brainstorming process into the entire cast and crew. Like, hey, he needs to get a knife. How do we do this?
Yeah, and everyone was pitching ideas.
Yeah, I think that the knife thing was me, if I'm not mistaken. That's
right.
from on the ground.
There it is.
But
There we go.
Not to take full
Nice,
credit.
yeah.
But I will
Should.
also say, though, just to give it a bit of a caveat, because the reason why you're able to have these creative conversations and still get things done is having a badass AD. So Jeff Schiffman, he and I argued about the Rams game earlier on Facebook, but I just will tell him I still respect him, even I don't respect that stupid call. I respect Jeff Schiffman more than about anybody else, because we would not have gotten the movie done, because sometimes you had to say, okay, someone has to make a decision here. We have to move forward. We've got to get things on in the can, or we're not gonna get through everything.
Miracle worker.
Yeah, that's a great shout out. That's because the AD is, I think, the most important hire on a low budget indie is the AD, because they're really the captain of the ship that's gonna work the schedule and make the movie happen. And an AD that can work your resources in the right way and be creative can makes the movie a lot better. And he also came up with the idea of the severed head.
Yeah, that's true.
That wasn't in the script. And he said, how is he going to drag the body all the way down there so quickly? And I said, it's a good question. I'm not sure. He said, what if he cuts his head off? I said, all right, that's awesome. And then Keaton called Lisa, and then she made that head.
Did the werewolf and Uncaged, and she made the head.
Yeah,
really fast, really cheap. And that's another, the AD, I didn't realize that. He's phenomenal and and that was another thing with prosthetics and cinematography. A big part of it is we weren't able, obviously, to pay very high salaries to anyone. We didn't take a salary, but we tried to make the pitch. This is a great venue for you to try something. So Lisa First is
forced. Yeah,
I can't. It sounds like forced. I can't. It's forced when I say forced. I can't get it out.
Forest without the E.
Oh, but that's confusing. Okay, I'll practice on my own time. But
and the last crew member to shout out is Clarissa Garcia Fresco, who's
there's
the
one
production
more
designer.
definitely, but
yeah, there are a lot more. But
I would just want to say that we barely talk about sound, and that's a good thing.
Oh
because
my God,
it's so crystal clear, and I could not believe, after all the indie films that I've done recently and TV shows, could not believe the quality of the sound on this thing. So Ravi Kush, another man near my heart.
Yeah, a lot of heroes.
Yeah.
And that's what it takes to make an indie film.
Yeah.
And make an indie film not feel like an indie film.
Yeah.
Because this did not feel like an indie. It felt like a very solidly budgeted film.
that is fantastic to hear.
No,
Thank
totally.
you.
Totally did.
Excellent. And it's credit to all of those, I think, all of those people, and everyone having an ownership of the story.
Yeah, that's true. Everyone did feel a sense of ownership.
That's a great
I
word.
think everyone who was on set contributed something, whether it was a small idea, a line, a piece of set design.
But that ownership has got to be really inspiring for the crew, because they feel like they're part of something and that their voice matters.
Yeah.
And because of that, they'll naturally work way harder and have more faith in you and appreciate you as the director, producer. So yeah, I think there's something to that idea.
Yeah,
One flip
that's
side to
true. If you give people autonomy and a sense of ownership, then that's a pretty good environment for them to do their best work.
Yeah.
So this movie really knocks auteur theory, where one person has the whole thing in mind from start to finish. This was really just collaborative and crazy.
One thing, though, on the flip side of this is logistically, we maybe didn't take enough ownership of the organization of some of the things. And that's one area that we want to work on, because that doesn't seem like productive fighting, is when we just haven't been able to, my glasses always reflected light and would infuriate the gaffing and Babcock, the cinematographer, that we hadn't handled it. But that's just pretty much hands on deck.
Right.
Yeah, that was my main lesson as the director for this film, is that it's okay for everyone to contribute, but I have to project more confidence, because people like knowing that the ship is headed in the right direction.
Right.
And even if I don't know what's going on, they like knowing that. So for the next one, I'll pretend like I know a lot more than I do.
And I think it's a fine line that you're speaking to, though. You have to project authority, and they have to know that you have a vision and a plan, or at least they need to think that you do. But also to be the kind of director who cannot be so precious about their vision and their this and their that, and take ideas that are good ideas and utilize them and listen to other people when they have input. It sounds like that is the kind of ideal balance for a good, happy, healthy, productive set.
Yeah, you said that better than me.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
There was very little that was super precious, which was helpful. Although at times I did feel like, I had to defend Zack's script quite a bit to say, guys, hey, wait a second, we're getting away from the script so much right now. This is what was written. Can we just make sure we get something like that? Not really a conversation actors should necessarily be having.
I'm
You're
glad you
fighting
said
a good
it.
fight.
Yeah, right. I mean, Zack wrote a good story, even if parts of the story were filled in at other places. This is something that we had opinions on because we cared about it, and we cared about it because of what originally began there. And Daniel's calm demeanor. Though at times, maybe we were running a little rampant, but it was always like, okay, Daniel's ready. Like, we're gonna get the camera up now. So I don't know what we're gonna shoot, but let's just kind of see what happens. Make real things happen in front of each other. It's pretty interesting.
It was very nice of him then and very nice of him now to say it was good script, because there were definite weaknesses. I think one thing, though, for filmmakers and the quality, I think production value is something where if you use your limitations, like a big part of the inspiration for this, my dad would always tell me about Knife on the Water coming up, which is that Roman Polanski movie that I have not seen. It's just the story, which he'd always tell me that he didn't have a lot of money, so he filmed it all on a boat. And then automatically it's the tension of you don't want to go off the boat. And
so use that to your advantage.
Use it to your advantage. And I think a lot of indies, if you can get talented people working for you, that doesn't have to be where the money can just go toward finding the right location that creates this built-in production value. And then you really can catch up. This is unsolicited and possibly foolish.
And just a lot of close-ups, because a Hollywood movie and you can have the same close-up. Just an actor takes up most of the frame, the rest is out of focus, and the shot looks the same. But once you go to wides, that's when you're going to show your budget.
He just gave away the secret sauce.
Yeah, so keep it tight as long as you can. Like Good Time is pretty much all close-ups.
I loved that movie.
Yeah, it's great. Too. Good time.
Loved that movie.
Yeah, it's amazing.
They brought it to 8mm at some point, or 16mm. They had a film print of it, I think, at the Angelica for like a weekend somehow.
Damn.
I didn't get to go see it though, but I wanted to. But yeah, that
I
movie
watched that
was
at your
awesome.
house, Zach. Yeah.
Oh, you watched it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I should, if they have the millimeter, we could, we should try to get that. I would love to see it, and I'm very excited for their new movie.
Yeah, what are they doing next?
Uncut Gems.
Oh,
which is something they were trying to make for a really long time. But now from Good Time, they got Martin Scorsese and Adam Sandler.
What?
Yeah.
As like executive producing, and Adam Sandler's in it.
Holy shit!
Yeah.
Oh, they really?
Have they wrapped it yet, or is it in production?
I think they wrapped.
That's amazing.
And it's shot in New
Scorsese
York.
jumped on board. That's crazy. Yeah,
And shot here. They're they're really inspiring.
they're big New York guys.
Yeah, I love it.
That's super cool. So seeing the movie and it's finished for him, and having worked on it for a while, what would you, looking at it retrospectively, what would you have invested more in, and what would you have invested less in? I don't necessarily mean money. It can be time, effort, energy, or money. But what would you have invested more in, and what would you invest less in? Seeing the final picture.
That's a good question.
I'll start with, like, there's such an interesting, from an actor's perspective, and the movies that kind of rise above the crust often have that name actor in it. But at the same time, I've worked with some folks that have been really nice, but they're not bringing the same. They're there to give the director what they have been hired for, as opposed to feeling like they have an impact, that the movie could take them somewhere, that they are invested in the entire process as well. So I'm quite curious about, whether or not the name on the movie can obviously sell more things, which opens more doors, but at the same time, you potentially can lose a little bit of that raw creative force. There are obviously some actors that would be great, I'm sure, but I'm curious your guys' thoughts about that. We've been talking about that a little bit lately.
I would invest more in art design, because Clarissa did a phenomenal job, and we actually had plans. There's a little bit of art that shows up in the movie, but we had plans to do a lot more with the art as background to try to connect some dots and leave some hints of like a broader idea, and we just didn't have the money.
Like art that symbolically would speak to the themes
on
of the
the
movie?
walls, yeah.
Oh, all right.
And also just to enrich the house more, and make it more fun to look at. And I think that's just a thing where we just thought at the time we didn't have the money, and she could do so much with so little already that we didn't really worry about her. But now in retrospect, she could have really made that go a long way. So that's something I wish. Even though we might have ended up cutting it all. I would have liked to have at least tried. Right. Because maybe it would have been cool. It might have been distracting.
I would say one of the parts of a film that don't get as glorified is just the sound, because it's only a couple people who do that job. But doing that right, I think we could have invested more there. Even though it was all done by one person, so it took him a really long time. And we probably could have finished the movie like 6 months earlier.
Just because of sound?
Yeah, because getting that right takes a really long time. And the other place that I think we would invest is getting the opening right. we spent a lot of resources on it, and I think it was well spent, because for an indie like this, people don't give a shit about your movie because every name that pops up, they don't know who that is.
Right.
So trying to get people to care and buy in the first 2 minutes is really difficult. So like we spent for a drone, a Steadicam, and really threw everything at the screen to try to get people into it.
Right, that opening drone shot. Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember that.
And the chase in the woods we shot 3 times.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
it's pretty insane.
And that was a big part of what took the movie so long, is we had to wait for the leaves to change.
Oh,
for
wow.
the third try.
That overhead shot of that area looked beautiful. Where did you shoot, by the way?
We shot the film in an Airbnb in New Rochelle, New York.
Oh, that's crazy.
So that's like 30 minutes north of here. And the drone shot was near Ramapo College in New Jersey.
Did Airbnb hosts know you were filming a movie?
Yeah, we thought about telling them it was a rom-com, but we have to be transparent at that point.
Right.
But they did give us a good deal because they lived with Zach's mother in their apartment.
Oh, wow.
So it was like a house swap situation.
Didn't go well.
No?
Yeah, it didn't go well.
The
whole production almost fell apart.
They
But
brought animals. My mom's a neurotic Jewish Upper West Side mom, and they brought multiple animals into the home in addition to them. And I had not prepared my mom, so she was furious and like quarantined them to my room.
When you say animals, you mean things other than cats and dogs?
They brought a cat and a rabbit and a gerbil.
Wow.
and
Or maybe no cat, at least a rabbit and a gerbil.
and a bird, I think.
They didn't bring they would never bring a bird to my
So
mom's
the birds-
apartment.
the
My
birds were
mom's
still on
petrified of
set.
birds. The birds stayed on set. So it became very stressful those first 3 days. I was in a state of like constant shock almost, because I was always waiting for the call, because they called us the day we were loading all the stuff into their house and said we're canceling the entire thing because your mom's being so difficult.
Whoa.
And so those first 3 days, and then finally my mom was so nice again and so accommodating, but those 3 days I was just waiting.
Yeah, the whole production hung on the fulcrum of a nice Jewish mother.
God, it was
I think that's how The Godfather got made.
No, it's a mind blower that was somebody's house. That whole fraternity house was a home.
Yeah, an Airbnb. You can stay there for $2.30 a night.
But it did look completely
not
different
bad.
because Clarissa redecorated it, which is something I always forget.
Oh
right?
my God,
Yeah.
Clarissa did incredible work to it because they had all this random design and she made it a very like tungsten red and
that's
orange.
Did you guys all live in the house as you filmed? Nice. That's economical.
Oh yeah, everyone did except I was with Mark, the producer, at our friend Luch's house, who's the third producer, who doesn't like to be called Luch. It's his old nickname, but I'm not gonna stop. And his parents, we didn't get along. So it's a lot of housing arrangements. This really was the tone of the overall movie, like accepting a degree of unpleasantness and not getting along.
I was the last actor hired, so there weren't any more bedrooms for me. So I actually commuted almost the whole time. I stayed with Daniel a couple times, but
Oh man.
we would shoot from roughly 6 p.m. until 6 a.m. and then I would get on a train about an hour and a half to Grand Central, back to the Upper West where I was staying with a friend.
Oh, hell.
And then would sleep for 6 hours or so, and then do the whole thing, like do the reverse back to set all over again.
How long were you guys filming for?
18 days.
And
Oh
then
wow, that's a quick shoot.
But then we tried on the opening 2 other times.
Right.
And
Right.
there was the last thing I would say to invest in, which I learned from Uncaged with Mark, is the cast. And maybe not money, because it's however much you can get them for. You should, the budget's only so big, but investing a lot of time. Because finding people is really, really hard, and it takes a long time. So we started casting before the script was even done, because we knew that it would take a few months to find these incredible dudes like Zach Byrd, Philip Andre Botello, Aaron Dallavilla, Cameron,
yeah, and again
Joe, John Louis.
the website's your oyster if you do it right. Like Backstage and casting networks, I don't know about
It just takes a long time.
It just takes so long.
What do you do? You going back
There's
earlier?
a search function that I didn't even know existed.
Okay.
Yeah,
'Cause
you
I
can
always-
pick height, age, type.
Oh, and it's
then-
all okay.
And then you can reach out to them specifically
And you contact them
instead of
directly.
waiting for them to reach out to you.
So it accelerates it, and it gives you a lot more. Like you don't have to wait on them.
Right.
If those actors are being honest, we, from the other end, we are the ones that decide what our type is, how tall we are, how old we are. So, I mean, you
So
have
you can
to
catfish producers, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Being honest, I think, is a better policy for a young actor. But I
Right.
would say that, if that's a way to use it, that's one way to do it.
Yeah, and also ultimately you don't want to get hooked on like we were very open to types. That was like our starting point and the general archetype of what we're trying to fill. But there's so many thousands of people.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times also with a lot of it also we were looking for was how much of their actual personality they could bring to it, which I think went a long way. Like Max, the short villain, which won't be his favorite. I shouldn't say it, but his favorite sentence in the world. But his audition was indistinguishable from the way he spoke to us before and after the audition, which was pretty.
He was the first audition of the whole movie, and we didn't audition anyone else for Max.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. He came in and he
just nailed it.
Well, we said haze me. We didn't even have the whole script written. So we're like, all right, let's just improvise it. We had him do the monologue, and then we had him haze me, thinking he would go relaxed. Other people who'd done it had been awkward, but he slapped me in the face and threw water in my face.
Holy shit.
I was like screaming.
Had you acted before?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I acted in Uncaged. I'm in Uncaged.
No, but like before that, I mean, were you more interested in producing, and did you kind of find your way, or writing rather, and find your way into acting by accident? Or
Yeah.
Is that something you always wanted to do?
It was only because of, I always enjoyed performing, but acting was only because Daniel, I really had not a lot going on. I wasn't in college or anything when Daniel made Uncaged.
Oh, okay.
So and then I really enjoyed it.
That's awesome.
So I like it. I don't like as much. I don't know if I have the. It's a really hard pursuit. I'm much more focused on writing, but I love to do it.
I would say though, just as actors, don't slap the other person for real in your auditions. Typically, I mean that worked for this character, and then these guys are more than willing to roll with the punches, quite literally. But no, don't slap your scene partner for real.
Unless they have a dumb face like Zach.
But I will say though, your advice about that, I mean, it's something that going from theater to film is very interesting. In theater, there's this understanding that you are you, and then you can put on the character and whatever term and definition that means to you. Casting directors in film are wonderful people, but the producers that they work for or they themselves often don't have that same kind of allowance for that leap to occur. So walking into the room being the thing that is expected from you is a pretty darn good audition strategy.
That's cool.
I had an acting teacher one time that had to do a funny sort of like Norwegian accent and a very awkward thing. So he went to the audition and was working on the accent so much that he just walked into the room doing the sort of weird Norwegian thing. And he booked the role, and then he got to set and was just himself in his dressing room, and they fired him because they were worried he couldn't do it again. That was, how real that they thought it needed to be. They were convinced that he was this person.
That's pretty method.
Yeah, I mean, and I understand because they're taking a risk, especially once you're a name, once you've got that resume or you've got the people that trust you. Yes, they'll understand that you're going to eventually put on the Joker or whatever it might be, but when they don't know, it's a risk. And how do they minimize the risk? They just believe that you are the thing. So you don't have to have the muscles of doing it beyond just kind of being yourself.
But to be pretentious for a second, like the Safdie brothers and Blue Ruin, I guess not pretentious, of just what I admire, for low-budget thrillers, they use an element of just... Safdie brothers often use real people that they found from New York. And then Blue Ruin, it feels pretty close to just real people expressing themselves too much violently. No?
I think Blue Ruin had a real casting.
Yeah, Blue Ruin had it, so I guess it's one of the sad,
Who's the director who only casts non-actors? It's the guy who did Beasts of the Southern Wild. I forgot his name. I think he lives here.
Ben Zeitlin?
I think so, yeah. Apparently he's doing the new Peter Pan. Entirely casted by non-actors.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Really
That's what I heard.
cool.
Yeah.
Bad news, Zach.
A lot of commercial directors prefer dancers because they know the dancers physically have precision and that particular kind of look that makes them...
And that translates to being better actors or being more prepared.
The actor in film is a two-dimensional object as part of the set eventually, right? You smush the image together and eventually you are the mise-en-scène as much as the...
And Andy Serkis can play any one of you.
Right. It's also true. Yeah. I mean, so I think that it's a different muscle. I think that acting is acting. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to split theater and film too much, but I also think that you have to know what the industry is looking for, at least at the beginning.
Right.
Sell them your really good hamburger before you sell them your creme brulee.
I guess for my acting, I never...
Is this a podcast for actors?
Yeah, sorry.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're jumping. No, I was just going to say, like...
It's the only thing I have expertise on.
Something I learned from Pledge from the other actors is the difference between acting and then just dramatically expressing yourself.
Huh.
So, like, for me, I felt like a lot of the things I've tried to do are pretty much just things I feel. And it's just a different setting for those feelings. I've yet to be able to do something, like, as opposed to Zach, who I feel like does find things that he connects to, but he's able to tap into stuff that isn't really in line with his character and feelings.
Yeah, it's great seeing both of them in the same scene together because Zach Byrd is one of the most well-trained actors I've ever worked with, where he has like 2 degrees. He's like a machine and he can just lock in immediately. And then Zack Weiner is the most untrained actor that I've ever worked for. And he kind of buys into the Aaron Paul method of acting of, I just pretend to be the part and then hopefully it works out. But he's very good at improv because Zach's household doesn't have, everyone just says whatever they want. So they don't really tie themselves down with inhibition. So Zach is really good at just responding to exactly what's in front of him with a genuine reaction. So it works really well in the scene. And then they made for a great dynamic together.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there was a lot of good chemistry among all of the actors. Did you guys do a lot of rehearsing? Or did you all...
We wanted to, but he appeared like 5 days before shooting.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, we would talk about the scene and get a lot of the improv or script ideas correct before we started shooting, but we kind of just rolled with it for a while.
We did read-throughs. We did one read-through before the movie of all the whole cast, and then we started.
Oh, wow.
But then a lot of like micro and people talking, and it fragmented the cast maybe in a good way. That might be one of those happy accidents,
Right?
Because it
happens.
We buddied. Me, Zach, and Philip talked. The 3 good guys. Supposedly, and the bad guys, they had their own texting group chat.
Yeah, they had their texting group chat.
I wasn't
like
invited to their
millennial
parties.
acting to get into character. You just keep texting each other, sending each other memes.
In character or
in
just...
character, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So that was your method way of all kind of being...
For them, I wasn't invited.
Oh.
Just the bad guys.
Oh, it was the bad guys. Okay, got it. Never mind. Cool.
Yeah.
Last few questions. I mean, when it comes to directing, filmmaking, writing, and acting, there's so many resources out there and books, and a lot of which is done by people who have never really done it or have not been that successful about it, particularly filmmaking. There's a lot of how-to books and courses by people who've never done it successfully. But that being said, just considering there's so much bullshit out there, were there any resources that helped you guys particularly in your career when it comes to filmmaking, writing, and acting? Any books or anything that you would say are the real deal and legitimately helped you with your careers?
Daniel, you want to start?
Sure. So the 2 directing books I've read were Elia Kazan's On Directing and then Sidney Lumet. I'm not confident on pronouncing either of their names.
No, I think
Lumet?
I think it's
Or
Lumet.
Lumet?
I think it's Lumet.
Yeah.
God damn it.
And he had one called Making Movies. So those were the 2 books that I think helped the most
Nice.
in terms of advice. And this is a new thing, but video essays are incredible now.
Video essays.
Yeah, like there are certain channels on YouTube that dissect film and show technique, and I can learn more there than I have in classes in NYU.
Wow.
And those helped a tremendous amount. And then like random interviews these blogs do. So a lot of it was just online film community.
That's cool.
And I want to shout out some of these YouTubers, but I'll forget the others. But just the general community that does that.
Video essays, they are so incredible. And Daniel, after Uncaged, just went on this binge all the way up until now. He just watches them all the time. In terms of filmmaking, like the producing side of it for me and everything that was doing it, Rebel Without a Crew and Werner Herzog, some of his stuff that his quotes that are so funny when he that deadpan ridiculous things. But the thing I took away, less practical and more just like there's no excuse for it not to get done.
Right.
As long as you have a camera and people are working with you, it should be a finished thing once you start it.
Right.
And then from a writing perspective, since then, I'd say the biggest help is Into the Story. And I'm forgetting his last name, but Scott Myers. Sorry, I'm screaming into the mic. Scott Myers. He has this blog online and a Medium channel.
Oh, yeah, I read that too.
I read it, and the general idea is really cool. Was of rethinking scripts instead of each one is this sprint toward greatness, and this draft is going to prove myself. It's just that you're going to do it a ton of times over and over, and you just have to get used to it. It's repeat. Don't worry more about repeating than showing. And
when it comes to writing and just ensuring that you develop a consistent practice.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And he made it numbered, which all other scripts I felt were really advice on this was abstract, and this was concrete because he had the 1, 7, 10, or like he had a rule you read 1 script a week, you write 7 pages a week. It was some algorithm of what you do a week. So from reading that, which was 2016, I've been trying to keep some version of that.
Oh, that's cool.
A lot of times it's more like one page like a month. But I try to keep some numbered sense of the
Yeah, I mean, I come from the academic perspective. I could talk about this for hours, but I do think ultimately that all the acting books say the same thing and they're going for the same product. You just have to find the process that speaks to you the most, and that's going to be something that's very individual to every artist. For me, it's just I've had a couple teachers that just spoke vocabulary that brought things out of me that I didn't otherwise understand through reading it or practicing it on my own. There's a book that I really like called The Actor and the Target by Declan Donnellan. I think he's a Russian theater guy that sort of takes the Meisner technique and puts it in a different light that is helpful because not every actor on set's a Meisner actor. Mm-hmm. So you can't really rely upon a lot of those techniques that are pretty quintessential.
Sorry, one more
you going to cut me off again?
Yeah, I just want to jump in.
Jeez.
Sorry.
Let him finish.
Oh, finish. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, no, that's essentially, I think that, but go out of your way to find teachers that are speaking the right language, and if they're not, get out of the class. Like if it doesn't, I think that so many of those, it's not that it's a bad teacher, it's just because it's not resonating for you.
Right.
And you could come at this from so many different perspectives because eventually we know what the product needs to be. You just have to find the ones that work.
But it's subjective. Like it has to
It's
resonate
very
with you.
subjective. It's got to resonate with you, whether it's a physical process, an emotional process, psychological process, whatever weird thing you do to get you to that place so that you eventually can just be right there in the moment and do what you need to do. That's important. And the only other advice I have, is to just do something in the audition room that nobody else is doing, because there's so many people going out for this stuff. They all look like you. They all, have probably really good actors and done this for a long time. So if you can find one angle that you think you can do that nobody else can do, that's the thing that's been most successful for me.
Nice.
Last thing is lose your mind. I listen to a lot of music with that general idea, and I think it's really good once you're at a certain point, especially only with horror, I think, that when you're trying to brainstorm, when you're trying to, or on set trying to like make up stuff on the fly, not for a director, this is for me as a producer and participating in it, just really just
Producer. Giving yourself a lot of credit.
Yeah, give us a lot of credit. Helping the producer.
You're a lowly writer.
Lowly writer.
Actor sometimes.
Assistant to producer. but basically the create, like the part where you're just throwing stuff at the wall.
Yeah.
Even on set or off set, I think it helps to just literally just be crazy and don't worry about your ideas making sense. Don't worry about them being smart.
Just go.
Throw a high volume of ideas that are important, like emotionally important to you. And when you're crazy, you have a lot of things that are emotionally important to you that don't make sense. They don't. No one else understands why it's important to you.
Right.
But you can. So I know it's kind of a weird idea, but
it makes sense though.
And the last thing for directing, I have a whole 50-page doc of all these things I save, and then I narrow it down to one checklist that I could just have every day of things I don't forget. I only remember parts of it, but the first is never give in, because I'm always tempted if I'm tired or if I feel guilty, just to say, okay, that's good enough. And I always need a reminder, no, don't give in. It's the only chance. And the other two things were, one was from Michelle McLaren, who directed a lot of Breaking Bad episodes. Okay. She said that one thing that you need for every scene is just know your way in and out. Which is just really practical advice, because the way in, what's going to be that opening shot and what's going to be that ending shot, then everything in between can be in flux, but you have to know that way in and out, and then it can kind of calm you if you can figure out the rest. And the other thing was, I forget what the 5 things are, but Coppola had 5 things, and he had this notebook that he went around that he used while he was making The Godfather, where he didn't have a script, but he had each scene with pages from the book and 5 things that you needed for each scene. One was the summary. The other was pitfalls of what can ruin the scene. So I tried to make one of those for each scene, knowing the exact purpose, what can ruin it, and then trying to avoid those.
That's cool.
I forgot what the other ones were, but one was useless. It was the time, but I guess for the Godfather that makes sense. Yeah. But for us, the time was 2018. It doesn't really matter. 2016.
They published that, by the way, the Godfather notebooks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can get it scanned page by page what the entire annotated script looks like.
Daniel.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, we gotta get some of that.
Yeah.
Gotta be getting that. I'll get it for you for your birthday.
Oh my God, thank you.
I think it's called the annotated Godfather. I think that's it.
Amazing.
Yeah. Cool. How's the film doing, by the way?
Pretty good.
Yeah?
We've gotten a good reception, but a limited audience so far. But we're going to Hulu. In a month
Oh,
and a half.
nice. Oh, that's great.
So we're happy about that, and we're hoping that we'll find a larger audience there.
Awesome.
Cool.
And
Yeah, but IFC Midnight's been awesome.
My family.
yeah, how did they get involved?
That the film got into Fantasia, and they saw it at Fantasia.
Oh,
and
nice.
Just bought it.
Great. Cool.
And they're in New York, so we love that.
Yeah, that works out. Last question. So what's next for you guys?
We are doing a couple things. Daniel and I are both working on screenplays right now, and we're trying to finish them next
Yeah,
month.
we're competing for what the next project will be.
Pretty
Whoever
much.
finishes first is what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And then hopefully we can afford Zach Byrd's increased salary for the next one.
But Mark also, our producer, is branching off, and he's trying to create a company that would try to replicate this kind of model.
Yeah, in addition to working on whatever scripts we do, he wants to make a lot of these low-budget pledges.
Oh, nice. Like a Blumhouse kind of model, low budget.
Yeah, it's like
New York,
Barnhouse
single
on lower
location.
budgets.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
claustrophobic location, yeah, pretty much.
He's doing them in New York?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So if you know some New York people who have some scripts,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
email mark@sagpictures.com.
Oh, he's okay, cool. If I put this on Dread Central, he's going to get totally loaded.
Yeah.
Oh,
please,
amazing. We'd
he's
appreciate
looking
it.
for horror scripts.
Yeah, we're looking for writers.
As long as it can be made for like close to the pledge budget that Zach announced halfwly through.
Yeah,
Nice.
180, ideally.
Yeah.
Or less. $1 would be the best.
Cool. Well, awesome, guys. This was a whole lot of fun, and congrats on Pledge. And
Thank you.
everybody listening, if you haven't seen it, check it out. Is it on? When does it come out on Hulu?
A month and a half.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's on all the VOD platforms now.
Yeah, I saw it on iTunes. You can get it on
It's under
iTunes.
TV.
But
Yeah.
we know, I mean, I
Spectrum.
would have waited for Hulu. So
Yeah, just wait for Hulu.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
thanks, Nick.
So let's get into some of the key insights that I got out of this conversation. First and foremost, it's all about the DP, baby. By DP, I obviously mean director of photography, you fucking perverts. Your DP is the person who can make your low-budget movie look way more expensive than it actually is. Have you ever started watching a super low-budget movie and because of the low production value, you found yourself completely checking out of the movie? It happens to me all the time, and I feel snobby saying it, but it's a real thing that you just can't help. In order to psychologically believe a movie, it has to have a level of quality that translates to believability. This is critically important when making your first few films. The low-budget look can be a kiss of death for first-time filmmakers. It's critically important to make your movies have the highest production value possible, so take the time needed to find yourself an incredible director of photography because they're the one who's going to show you how to make the movie that you want to make. Daniel and Zach also mentioned the benefit of working with a DP who has a gaffer background because they understand lighting really, really well, which is a big part of making your indie movies look way more expensive than they actually are. Number 2, turn your cast and crew into a brain trust. If there's a technical challenge on set, which there always is, or a flaw in your script, or any kind of hiccup during production, toss the challenge out to your cast and crew to help you solve. When filming, you have dozens of creative people all around you, and chances are someone on your set has dealt with the same issue before or will approach the problem from a different perspective than you. Your job as the director isn't necessarily to have all the answers. Instead, your job is to find all of the answers. Your cast and crew can be your best problem solvers and collaborators. Not to utilize them is a wasted opportunity. Number 3, create a director checklist. I found this really fascinating. Dan has a whole list of specific pieces of advice and insights from other directors. For every movie he works on, Dan picks 5 specific insights that he turns into a checklist. Then he checks off every day of filmmaking each one of these little pieces of insights to make sure that he's maximizing his opportunity as a director. Dan also took a cue from what Coppola did on The Godfather and wrote out the potential pitfalls of each and every scene he directs to make sure they all work as well as possible. If you're listening to this, you probably read director interviews and probably watch feature-length commentaries. So start your own list. Evernote is a great place to start. Wouldn't you want to walk on set with a checklist of advice from people like Coppola, Scorsese, and Tarantino? Make your list and keep it with you when you shoot or even write. Last and not least, here are some of the key resources that the guys mentioned throughout the course of our conversation. As far as books, Making Movies by Sidney Lumet, Kazan on Directing by Elia Kazan, Rebel Without a Crew by the amazing Robert Rodriguez. This is one of my personal favorites. And Go Into the Story. This is actually not a book. It's a screenwriting blog series by Scott Myers, which is on The Blacklist. The other thing that Dan mentioned was really, really formidable for his abilities as a director was to watch video essays. So these are essays that are on YouTube that break down specific movies and themes and how they shot certain films and are just chock full of a lot of great information in different ways that people break down the script. They're all over YouTube, so definitely check those out. All right, guys, this was a ton of fun. Thank you all for listening to the Nick Taylor Horror Show. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to follow the show, feel free to follow me on the Instagrams at I'm Nick Taylor. That's I am Nick Taylor. I'm on Twitter on the exact same handle. Thank you again for listening to the Nick Taylor Horror Show. We scare because we care.